Your kindness was a mirror, and when they looked into it, they saw their own ugliness reflected back. You extended your hand, not as a weakness, but as a deliberate choice, a strength born out of the chaos you've endured and risen above. They saw that hand as an invitation to exploit, to trample, to mock. It wasn't kindness they were testing, it was their own capacity for cruelty. And they failed. Miserably, pathetically, undeniably failed. They thought your warmth was naivete, that your patience was foolishness, that your silence was submission. How wrong they were. It was never about you, was it? It was about their inability to comprehend a world where someone chooses kindness not out of necessity, but out of sheer willpower. They took your understanding as permission, your forgiveness as consent. But every time they pushed, you observed. Every slight, every insult, every manipulation, each was cataloged, not out of spite, but out of clarity. You wanted to see how far they'd go, not because you didn't know better, but because you wanted them to reveal themselves fully. And oh, how they did. They couldn't see the storm behind your eyes, the fire beneath your calm. They mistook your gentleness for weakness because they'd never experienced true strength. Strength isn't shouting over others or forcing your will. It isn't dominance or control. Strength is restraint, is clarity, is knowing exactly when to hold your ground and when to walk away without looking back. They mistook their own cowardice for power, their malice for cleverness. They were so consumed by their own egos that they missed the quiet resolve in your demeanor. And now? Now they're left with nothing but the wreckage of their own arrogance. You didn't lash out because you didn't need to. The truth is always louder than anger. You didn't stoop to their level because you knew that the moment you did, you'd validate their behavior. And so you let them play their games, let them show their true colors, let them dig their graves with every sneer, every condescending word, every underhanded action. They thought they were testing you, but in reality, they were exposing themselves. And what did you do? You simply stood there, unshaken, watching as they unraveled. There's a special kind of satisfaction in watching someone destroy themselves with the very tools they thought would harm you. It's poetic almost. They believed they had the upper hand, that they were in control. But control is an illusion, and they were its most faithful believers. You didn't need to raise your voice or your hand because the weight of their own actions was more than enough to crush them. The silence you left in your wake was deafening, and they felt it in the pit of their stomachs long after you were gone. Your kindness wasn't a gift for them to squander, it was a test, and they failed in the most spectacular, humiliating fashion. You didn't give them your time, your patience, or your forgiveness out of ignorance. No. You gave it because you knew what it took to rise above the kind of brokenness they carried. You wanted to believe just for a moment that they could be better, that maybe their sharp edges could be softened if met with warmth instead of the ice they're so accustomed to. And how did they repay you? With arrogance, with entitlement, with the kind of venom that comes only from people who mistake kindness for weakness. They were so proud of themselves, weren't they? So smug in their belief that they had you figured out, that you were some fool who didn't see the traps they were laying in plain sight. They thought they were clever. They thought they were in control, but control was never theirs to hold. Every word they spat, every attempt to twist your generosity into something they could manipulate, was another nail in the coffin of their own dignity. And you stood there, watching, letting them dig deeper and deeper, your silence louder than any scream could ever be. It wasn't that you didn't see it coming. You saw it from the very beginning, from the moment their mask slipped just enough to reveal the cracks beneath. But you let them play their games anyway, not out of ignorance, but out of grace. Because that's who you are. You're not the type to lash out at the first sign of betrayal. You're the type to give people a chance to prove themselves, to rise above their worst instincts. And when they couldn't, when they fell, face first, into the pit of their own pettiness, you didn't even need to push. They did all the work for you. It's laughable, really. The way they thought they were winning. The way they mistook your patience for surrender. They didn't realize that every time you held your tongue, every time you chose not to stoop to their level, you were stripping them of the illusion of power. They thought they were testing you, but in reality, they were exposing themselves. And now, here they are, standing in the rubble of their own failure, too blind and too proud to even realize it. The audacity they had to think they could test you, as if your kindness was some fragile thing, as if it could be bent or broken by their cruelty. They didn't understand that kindness isn't a weakness, it's a weapon. It's the kind of power they'll never possess, because it takes strength to be kind in a world that constantly tries to harden you. It takes courage to look at someone who's hurt you and choose not to retaliate. And you have that strength in spades. But don't mistake your restraint for indifference. No, they should never assume that. You felt every slight, every insult, every moment they thought they were getting one over on you. It burned, didn't it? Not because you didn't see it coming, but because you did, and you wanted so desperately to believe they'd prove you wrong. But they didn't. They couldn't. And now, the weight of their failure is theirs to carry. They'll try to shift the blame. That's what people like them always do. They'll tell themselves you were too sensitive, that you misunderstood, that you're the one who turned away. Let them wrap themselves in their delusions. It doesn't change the truth. The truth is, they had a chance, a rare, precious chance, to rise above the petty, spiteful, hollow little lives they've built for themselves. And they threw it away. There's a particular kind of rage that comes from watching someone take something pure and good and destroy it just because they can. It's not the loud, fiery kind of anger. It's deeper, colder, sharper. It's the kind of rage that simmers in your chest, that lingers in the back of your mind, that makes you question why you ever bothered in the first place. But even in the depths of that anger, you know the answer. You know why you tried. Because that's who you are. You're not like them. You don't hurt people just because you can. And that's what makes this so infuriating. They had a chance to see that, to learn from it, to be better, and they threw it away because they couldn't see past their own egos. They thought they were so clever, so superior. But cleverness without wisdom is just another form of stupidity. And superiority born from putting others down is nothing but insecurity in disguise. You could have fought back. You could have torn them down with a single word, a single gesture. But you didn't. Not because you couldn't, but because you wouldn't. Because you knew that stooping to their level would only give them the satisfaction of thinking they mattered enough to provoke you. And they don't. Not anymore. They'll feel it eventually. The emptiness. The weight of their own failures pressing down on them. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. They'll look back and realize what they lost. Not because you weren't clear, but because they refused to listen. They'll remember your kindness, not as a weakness, but as a strength they couldn't understand, and it will haunt them. Because people like that always think they're invincible until the cracks start to show. You walk away, not because you've given up, but because you've given enough. Enough chances, enough time, enough energy. You walk away because you know your worth, and you refuse to let their failure define you. You're not the one who failed. They are. They failed to see what was right in front of them. They failed to rise to the occasion. They failed to be decent, to be human,